This is the intro to my video, please watch. Hello and welcome to Resin Crafting with Chris Collected. On today's episode, we're going to be doing some experiments with fabric and art resin. We will be making 3 different coasters using cotton fabric in 3 different ways. The 3 different ways include one that is smaller than a piece, so we want to put that into the center and have the resin all around it. The gerbil piece will be the entire flat piece, and I wanted to see if resin would go underneath of it or would stay behind it. And the third one is a galaxy, and it will be just all kinds of bunched up in there. We'll be using Pearl EX along with Technorue's metallic powders. And I even throw in a little bit of those sakura flowers. This is going to be a big project. This is a 1-to-1 resin, so I will be starting at 6 and then going all the way up to 12. 1 part of epoxy resin, 1 part hardener in equal parts. You will also notice that there is a new camera angle. I'm trying a front-facing camera and we'll see how that works. If you have any comments, suggestions, or inquiries, please put them in the comments below. Thank you so much. This is a lot of resin, so it took quite a while to actually stir it all up, and was much heavier than previous batches. What do you think is going to happen when I pour in the resin onto the fabric? Comment below. I'm going to separate the epoxy resin into 3 different containers so that we can do 3 different colors. However, I will be keeping the center one a clear and not adding anything to it. I wanted to have some clear for this project, that way I can pour the clear directly onto the fabric and not have it dye the fabric a different color. So what I decided to do is to take the Technorue's metallic gold, and I'm going to paint the inside of the circular cat mold. That way there will be a ring of pigment, but only on the top of the coaster. And the rest of it will be poured clear. This is very simple to do. Pretty much any brush, you just take that with any kind of powder and you can put it into your silicone mold. It will not stick to the silicone, instead it will stick to the epoxy resin. And it saves you a step of having to paint afterwards. You can paint it before. I have this really cute little cat inside of a frame. I make all kinds of awesome little fabric products, and I wanted to be able to use up some of the fabric, little extra bits here and there that I have, and use it in epoxy resin, making something I hope truly unique. I have seen other resin artists do similar with fabric, and so I'm not sure if this technique is appropriate, and I've learned from this video that it is better to put the epoxy resin onto fabric first, let that harden a little bit, then put it in. Otherwise, there was a little bit of bubbles on all of these. As previously stated, this circular coaster mold will be poured clear. I'm still working on getting my placement for all of these resin pieces. Now I understand why in Hollywood they have marks for where a person should stand. I need to develop my own marks for where my resin pieces should be. Next up, we're going to be using some shimmer violet, Pearl EX powder, along with the Reflect Violet Pearl EX powder. Let's go ahead and mix them up and get them poured. First, we are going to pour clear into each of the fabric to get it so the fabric has epoxy on it. Then I will pour in the colored epoxy resin afterwards. That Reflect Violet is quickly becoming my favorite color. So we're going to go ahead and pour in clear into the fabric now. I felt that if I poured a colored one into it, it would affect the result too much. And at the end of the day, it does end up going through it a bit, and so the fabric does turn a bit purple. But still very legible. But I realized after doing this that it would have been far easier to put these outside of the mold, get them full of that clear epoxy, let that harden for 30 minutes or more, and then put it into this. I think it would work a lot better, and I will be doing that in the future to test to see if that method is better. We'll go ahead and pop some bubbles along the way as well. This small cat coaster mold absolutely became my favorite one. Make sure to stay to the end and see the results. Now I'm slowly pouring it in. Ultimately, I had no idea what I was going to have as results, but that's the fun part about experimentation. You never really know to the end. I got this fabric from a local thrift store and did not quite know how to use it, but ultimately I thought it would be perfect for this project. The idea here is I knew this one was going to fail. The other two I had high hopes for, but this one I ultimately knew that there were going to be large air pockets, as literally the fabric was going to end up having air pockets in it. I tried my best to scrunch it all in there, but I knew that it was going to fail. But that's how you learn, is that you learn by failing. This is the house of improvements, not the house of perfect. We were always striving to improve here. Now we are pouring in the shimmering violet as best we can, as this fabric never really laid flat. And if I was going to end up using this as a real coaster, I would have to sand down the back fabric, as it never laid down flat even when it hardened. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit, as it took me several minutes to just kind of try to tap it down as much as I could, try to get as much of the air out of it as I could. However, I knew that I really didn't think I was going to be able to get in there. In the future, I'm considering trying this one again, but I'm going to make several cuts into the fabric first. That way I can see if I can maybe just get it to lay down on top of itself. Also, tell me below what you think of that bottom left camera. I'm thinking of keeping it that way, otherwise I might switch back and forth having multiple camera angles and only seeing one at a time. Which would you prefer? Multiple cameras at one time, or one camera view and multiple different viewpoints? To me, I think it gives me a unique, different view than others. But I'm up for trying all different types of methods. One thing that I did for this project that I had not done in previous projects is that I came back about 5 minutes later and 10 minutes later and kept trying to pop bubbles. That way it would have the least amount of bubbles of any of my projects. It still had a few though. I still had some underneath the fabric that I haven't quite figured out how to solve yet. But we'll keep experimenting and figure out how to master it. Because I sure do have a lot of resin and fabric, so let's combine them, right? Now I also have the sakura flowers, and I thought with all that clear, it'd be great to have just a few little flowers in there. But I've learned my lesson from previous videos that I cannot just put glitter on top. It will not sink on its own, so I do manually push it all down in there. And eventually I decided as I was doing it that it should be a perfect little ring. So I spend a couple minutes trying to get all of that into being a nice little ring. This is a new tool that I got recently. It is all metal and offset, and so I thought it would be perfect for these kind of molds to help release bubbles. As you can see, there is a very strong wind inside of my studio, and so I'm having to actually struggle a little bit to even use the lighter there. But that's a good thing. You want the room to be very well ventilated. Now for this next experiment, as you can see here, I have a lot of resin, but also a lot of rugs. So I make rugs, resin, and things out of fabric. And so in this video, I wanted to combine a little bit of all of that. This should be unique. I have not seen anyone else attempt this. And again, one of those kind of projects that I assumed was going to fail. Because how am I going to get all of that to actually be flat? However, just because I knew it was going to fail does not mean I do not try it. You cannot improve unless you try. So all I'm doing is taking some clear epoxy resin and shoving these trash into it essentially. And I knew the epoxy resin would go into that yarn, which is acrylic yarn. If you're curious what this is, anytime you use a rug tufting gun, which make sure to check out my videos on Tuesdays, and you could see me using a rug tufting gun. And these are essentially the offcuts from it. And so I've been collecting them because I'm going to be making pillows out of it. And I was like, well, what else can I use? Because this company is all about recycling, upcycling, and minimizing my waste. In the future, I think the same kind of problem I had with the fabric I should do with this, which is to put it into epoxy resin first, then I should have poured it, instead of just lightly tapping on it until it absorbed the resin. Which took, as you can see, quite some time. So let's go ahead and speed it up. I really do think this piece turned out to be amazing in the end though. And it is a great concept. I can upcycle products from different parts of my company and make resin pieces out of it, whether it's fabric scrap or acrylic yarn scrap. And I would encourage you to do the same. Now, classic me, I of course had way too much resin afterwards. so I quickly poured as much as I could into whatever mold I could find. The first one was a full sphere mold. I went ahead and poured it only halfway so that would make a semi-sphere. The next was a bunch of these heart molds, and I went ahead and just tried to use up the rest of the purple on it. Finally, I had a bunch of the clear left, and so I decided to make a coaster holder. Even though this one will not fit any of these coasters, this holder is for a different mold set. And ultimately, this will be the only piece that is not demolded during this video, as it is not finished yet. I threw a bunch of these clay pieces and a bunch of the sakuras onto it, and then shoved them into the sides. The idea would be that the full sides would all be clear, and then the bottom of it would then be a solid color. It didn't fully work out that way, but you know, sometimes in art you have an idea, and then the amount of resin and just, you know, how gravity and everything works sometimes doesn't always work with you. But I think it will turn out to be great once I put a solid white back on it, and the sides will still be full of those sakura flowers and will look really good. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out these unmolding photos afterwards. Have a good day, everyone.